It's about I got to say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
Whoa, he has trouble with the snap, and the ball is free. It's picked up by Michigan State. Jalen wants Jackson, and he scores on the last play of the game.
Ground ball, right side. Cabrera will cut it off. Galarraga covers. He's out. No, he's safe.
Phoenix has the foul, and a pinnacle ball throws it down.
DeBrincat gets it back to Goss. He's bearing across now. King.
Save River. They score! Raymond!
Big five. Johnson to throw, and it's caught by St. Greg for a first down.
This is BS Sports.
And away we go. Welcome one. Welcome all. Free at last. Free at last. My God, we are free at last of the Kansas City Chiefs. Not anything all that significant. But how did everybody enjoy the Super Bowl? Did everybody have fun? Everyone had a good time? I had a good time. If that means anything to anybody. I just got to tell you, I hate to say I told you. I'm one of those people, whenever I'm right about something and people didn't believe in me, I'm really not one of these kinds of people who glorify, loves getting glorified and taking and bragging about being right about something. I'm not that kind of person. I'm just not that kind of person. No. But I did tell you so. I mean, in this particular case, I totally did say that the Eagles were going to win and that the Chiefs were not actually good, and it was fugazi. I don't know. That's pretty much all I got. No, we're going to talk more about the Super Bowl. Obviously, we got some NBA trade deadline stuff to talk about. Now, we'll get into it in a little bit. It wasn't actually that incredible of a trade deadline, if I'm being perfectly honest. But there is some more stuff about the Luka trade that you hate to see it. you hate to see it. Plus, we got a little bit of NFL news, some stuff with Aaron Rodgers not sticking around with the New York Jets. All it took was 2 years. I want to say it was also 2 years the Jets for Brett Favre. So I do expect a Minnesota Vikings arc for our good friend A.A. Ron. Plus, I also got a question about a post-football world. We won't have football, until what, mid-August? Is that whenever the preseason starts in the NFL? That'll be the first time no, probably a little bit earlier than that, the Hall of Fame game, right? Because that's the first football game of the next season. So, hope you enjoyed the Super Bowl, because you're not going to get a real football game, whether or not we call the Hall of Fame game a real football game is somewhat up for debate, but we'll all be craving it, and we will all want to watch it, although we will feel disgusting afterwards. But either way, I guess let's just jump into it. Call it the deep end. Jump into it. So that was a great Super Bowl. Look, okay, there was a lot of people. So many people were saying this Super Bowl sucked. Oh my gosh, it was so boring. I hated it. It was like watching paint dry, grass grow. It was the worst. I got to tell you, all right, as a certified professional hater, as a member of the haters club, or what was the thing in the Chappelle show? The player hater awards. As a member and winner of the player hater awards, I enjoyed every single second of watching the Kansas City Chiefs get exposed in national television. It was absolutely delicious. Now, it all started, to me, I think things really started to unwind. And this obviously is one of the earlier parts of the game. But I think it all basically started after the Chiefs did nothing with that turnover and then proceeded to, do the thing. Let me actually see, because that was like, you thought, oh man, Jalen Hurts throwing an interception. Here we go. This is what's gonna do it? Because at that point, the Eagles were only up 7-0, so the Chiefs are gonna get the ball back. Maybe they answer back, and no, they didn't. It was like, let me give you the Chiefs' drives one by one here, okay? First drive, 4 plays, 12 yards, punt. Second drive, 3 plays, 7 yards, punt. That was after an Eagles touchdown, by the way. Then after the interception, 3 plays, 7 yards, punt. Then a pick six thrown by yours truly, or not. I don't know what. I didn't throw the pick six. It might as well have been me out there. That was 3, and that was, by the way, only 3 plays and -6 total yards. Then after that masterclass, you have 3 plays, another -6 yards, and a punt. Then you have another interception, another punt, and then it was the half. So, in other words, you had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 drives. You had as many drives as you could get with a touchdown and an extra point, and you got nothing. You didn't have a single drive that you had just one drive that was more than 10 yards. I.e., you had one drive where you got a first down on your own, like without any penalties or anything like that. Where you, oh my gosh, excuse me, I'm dying. Where you netted a first down. That to me, that is, GOAT level stuff. Okay, you want to talk about GOAT? I know there was a lot of people who were saying, "Oh my gosh, here we go. This is the GOAT debate has been reignited." I got to tell you, like this if there's a GOAT for awful performances in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes has 1 and 2, because this was not all that different when he played Tampa Bay a couple of years back. This was just absolutely atrocious. Now, there were some people who were saying Patrick Mahomes played a decent game. Huh? A decent game? Maybe if you look at the counting stats. But if you turn the ball over 3 times, one of them for a touchdown, you didn't have a decent game. You didn't score a point in the first 2 quarters. In fact, you didn't score a point until pretty late into the 3rd quarter. By that point, the game was over, right? We're talking, the Eagles at that point were up 34-0, which they showed it on the stat sheet. 34-0 was the largest lead in the Super Bowl since the Seahawks blew out the Broncos. The game was over at the end of the half. Kendrick Lamar was coming out and singing, attempting to sing songs, and the game was over. The Eagles probably could have popped champagne and nobody would have batted an eye. And I don't want to say this was like entirely predictable. Obviously, the Chiefs going into this game had a very good defense. That's why they were 15-2. But this really did feel like the bottom actually finally in the moment falling out. Every flaw, every flaw that anybody had ever pointed out about the Chiefs going into this game came completely true. Their offense was awful all year. They could not move the football down the field. They couldn't run the ball. Isaiah Pacheco was non-existent. Your leading rusher was Patrick Mahomes. They couldn't throw the ball because Mahomes was turning the ball over. He didn't have time to throw it either because the pressure was just coming from the Philadelphia D-line, which, by the way, never even had to blitz. They didn't blitz, and they got like a million pressures. So the offensive line sucked for Kansas City. They had absolutely no offensive firepower. Don't let that 22 points in garbage time trick you into thinking that there was any life in this Chief team. They had just one quarter where they outscored the Eagles, and it was the 4th quarter when the Eagles were putting in Kenny Pickett. Like, I got to tell you, I've watched a lot of Super Bowls in my lifetime. I guess the last time I would have ever seen a Super Bowl where the starters were benched would have been that Seahawk one when they beat the Broncos. And that one I don't even remember watching the whole way. I don't even really remember watching it in general. Like, this was a shock to the system. No doubt about it. Now, if we go into the actual statistical measures of it, because I don't want to just talk crap about the Chiefs as much as I enjoy doing that, you do have to talk about the winners in this. And that would be, of course, the Philadelphia Eagles. And if you just look at the stat sheet offensively, nothing really jumps out of the page. I mean, yeah, Jalen Hurts, just 221 yards, a couple of touchdowns and a pick. That's good for a 75 QBR on ESPN, 119 rating. I mean, it was a good game, obviously. He won Super Bowl MVP. But, Mahomes threw for more touchdowns and more total yards, but it didn't matter, right? Like the game was the problem. Like the reality with the stats that Mahomes was putting up is that they were, garbage time stats. They were the Pat Statford for all my Lions fans out there. That was that kind of stats. For Hurts, it was meaningful. It was getting the rushing touchdown on the the quarterback sneak. I'm not calling it that, all right? It's a quarterback sneak. All these idiots who want this play banned. Brother, it is a quarterback sneak. I've been running it since I was a little kid in Madden. It's not a new play. Anyway, he had the rushing touchdown. He had the couple of touchdowns in the air. He did have it wasn't a great interception, but it didn't mean anything because your defense was like, all right, we'll just murder this non-existent offense for the Chiefs. Like Saquon Barkley, love the guy. He played a really not great game. And I will eat crow on this. I thought that he was going to be the key to this offense. If he wasn't going, then the Chiefs could win it. No, because the Eagles defense was just that good that it did not matter if Barkley was not playing because you got Devontae Smith. You got A.J. Brown. You even have Jahan Johnson. I got to be honest. I forgot that he was on the Eagles. I forgot that the Commanders had traded him away or let him walk. I don't even remember what the situation was. I forgot that he was on the Eagles. I really did. Dallas Goedert really wasn't a factor. A couple of catches for him, just 27 yards. And again, like, it really just felt like a Jalen Hurts game. Like, despite the fact that, again, his stats were not, blow you away. He didn't throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, despite the team scoring 40 points. It was all about the defense, primarily, at least in my mind. Cooper DeJean, civil rights hero, representing us white folks in the cornerback room, getting a pick six. There was many people, including myself, were kind of hoping that Cooper DeJean would win the Super Bowl MVP for that pick six. It wasn't going to happen. It was going to be Jalen Hurts. I was saying it when I was watching the game with a bunch of my friends. I was like, he's winning the Super Bowl MVP because he is the entire, like, there's not any one player that's just destroying the Chiefs. It's not like Devontae Smith is getting 150 yards or, A.J. Brown or Saquon. It's Jalen Hurts operating this unit with efficiency and ability. Like, it was a well-oiled machine. It was not like you had any one guy, like I just said, running away on the stat sheet. It was just a complete and utter domination, top to bottom, for the Eagles. And again, I got great enjoyment out of it. Watching DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce drop balls, it was glorious. It was like a Renaissance painting. It was like going to the Louvre in France and being able to gaze upon the Mona Lisa or the Da Vinci's Last Supper. It was a magical experience. And I know a lot of people did not enjoy the game. But frankly, I got to ask, did anybody else enjoy it as much as I did? Because I got so much enjoyment out of it. I thought this was, the exact kind of, universe setting things right back into place where they belong, where logic and reason and facts and statistics finally won the day. It wasn't like all year I had to deal with, oh my gosh, the Chiefs keep winning. How are they winning these games? Block field goal against the Panthers, against the Broncos, a game-winning field goal against the Panthers that they needed to have. All these games that they barely winning. The one time they play a real good team and the Bills, they lose that game. And then they beat the Bills in the conference championship. And you're like, oh my gosh, are we going to live in a world where Taylor Swift is undefeated in Super Bowls? And I didn't even have to see her more than once during that broadcast. They showed her before the game started and one time during the game. And then Fox was like, no, don't show her. Don't show her. And I was calling for it. I wanted the Taylor cam. When Travis Kelce was dropping the ball, I wanted the Taylor cam. I wanted to see her face every time Travis Kelce dropped the ball. And you could say that's just me being a hater and being, I don't know, just a masochist of some kind. Fine. You know what? That's where I'm at. That's how I felt. I couldn't stand the whole Chiefs world. We're just living in it. I hated it. I didn't want it. All right. So I'm willing to short term give it to the Eagles. Now, it's also kind of a weird stat. I just thought about this. I think it was either yesterday or last night or the night of the game. Mahomes is 0-2 in Super Bowls where Brady is present. Kind of odd. It's kind of odd. Now, I do want to defend Mahomes a little bit. I know I've been kind of dogging him, but there's a lot of people who, after this game, were doing the Mahomes is absolutely not the GOAT anymore. He's got to be out of the conversation. I'm sorry. You cannot bury a guy before his career is over. All right? Do I think he is the GOAT? No. I mean, you really can't be the GOAT if you don't have as many Super Bowls and you lost to the guy who you are ostensibly supposed to be better than. So, sure, right now he is not. But how old is Mahomes? Honestly, how many years realistically do you think Mahomes has left in him? He's not, 40 years old. He's not like a nobody. Hold on, he's 29 years old. Okay, 29 years old. That's still, you got, assuming things don't go poorly, assuming he can be as good as Brady for as long, that means he's still got about a decade. Now, do I think that is going to be the case? I don't know. Health standards and workout practices only get better, presumably. But either way, all these people who are saying Mahomes is absolutely not going to be the GOAT, we can shut this debate down, it's over, it's done, basta. I'm not saying that it's not over. I'm just saying we at least wait until Mahomes, hangs up the shoulder pads one last time? Can we please? Can we let the guy have a chance to write his own legacy? And furthermore, do we have to constantly be doing this thing of, oh, well, if he's not better than Tom Brady, he sucks. Or we should just dog on him because he's not as good as Tom Brady. What are we doing? He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the best quarterbacks he's certainly one of the best quarterbacks in NFL history. He's probably the best quarterback in Chiefs history. What are we doing? Why can't we just say he's one of the all-time greats? He's electric to watch. He's an amazing player. And, we'll see what his career and what his status is by the end of it. I didn't live through Joe Montana, but I did live through Brady. And I got to tell you, you know what I didn't have to deal with every time that Brady, lost, or every time that Brady, didn't fulfill some record or what have you? I didn't have to deal with is he better than Joe Montana? I guess not. Let's finally end this debate. It's no, he just kept playing and eventually kind of naturally gained steam to the point where it was okay, then he's just the greatest of all time. He's proven it. But yeah, we have all these talking heads and these pundits doing all of this nonsense. It's just let things actually happen. All right, before we say debate is over. It's not over until Mahomes' legs fall off, as far as I'm concerned, or his arm falls off. I guess something has to fall off. His head falls off. His fingers fall. I don't know. Which fingers? He could probably still play with a certain amount of fingers. Anyway. Super Bowl halftime show sucked too. I don't have much else to say about that. I know some people were defending it because they like Kendrick Lamar. I'm not a Kendrick Lamar fan, I guess. I didn't understand a word he was saying. So that's I thought that part of the role of, I guess rapping or any musical art in which lyrics are involved, you have to know what the person is saying. This is my unpopular opinion, but I don't know. I thought the dancing was pretty good. I like the American flag. I'm a simple man. All right. That's the end of the segment. So the Pistons don't play until 8 o'clock because they're in Chicago. So right now I have FanDuel Sports Network on, and they are doing what appears to be a Stadium Series preview and a little recap show of all the other previous Stadium Series. There's musical acts to these. Do they play at halftime? Do they play at the end of the game? Or I guess there's no halftime in the NHL. Do they play at an intermission? I didn't know any of this existed. Also, who are these people? Like, who are these TV personalities on FanDuel Sports Network? I just find this fascinating. I find the whole regional sports net, like, the only real time that, in my experience at least, that anybody actually ever watched, say, I guess now it's FanDuel Sports Network, but back in the day when it was Fox Sports or Bally Sports, the only time people would ever actually watch is when one of the teams is playing, like one of the games are on. So, like, who are these people who are on these shows in between games? And furthermore, the only reason they're on TV is because presumably people are watching the show, right? Like they could put nothing and probably be well off, but they put something. And that's because somebody is watching. Who watches these shows? I have to know. Somebody let me know. If you watch any of these shows, please let me know. Oh, I didn't know the Red Wings were in 2 of those. We were at the one in Coors Field. Huh. Well, 2016 was the last year the Red Wings actually made the playoffs. Well, I guess that would make sense. That was the last actually good Red Wings team. But right now they're sitting in a playoff spot. Whether or not they'll keep it is something. Now, all right. So this is a bit of an unusual topic. I don't really do this sort of thing. I typically try to keep things in sports news and commentary on the news on this show, just because that's sort of my interest in general. However, I figured given the fact that we're entering this period of post-football, I don't want to say drought, but yeah, sure. Let's just say drought. And I guess I just wanted to present to people who might not be, overall sports fans, but just primarily football fans. I wanted to present some options, I guess. So, the whole thing about this is, what are you doing in a post-football world? Because I know many people basically just shut off the television. they cut the cord. They cut their YouTube TV, whatever. They just don't watch any sports. I don't know. They read the Iliad. They just read a large book until by the time it's August. And Hall of Fame game's back. All right, we're back. So I wanted to ask in general, what are people doing? What are you doing after the Super Bowl? Like, what are you filling up your Sundays and Saturdays, because there's no college football anymore as well. What are you filling it with? So I wanted to give a couple of options, or rather a couple of things that are happening in the sports world now that allow for one to, start up fresh, so to speak. So the primary thing for me is college basketball. College basketball right now is entering that final stretch, right? You have the final few games of the regular season. The regular season usually ends early March, and then you get into a bunch of the tournaments, like the conference tournaments, and then, of course, the March Madness tournament. To be a little bit more specific, and obviously this is only really related to the local teams that I follow primarily, Michigan and Michigan State are both playing really well. Michigan, I believe, plays Purdue, or they might be playing Purdue right now. Meanwhile, Michigan State also has a game tonight against the Indiana Hoosiers. Michigan State's coming off of a huge comeback win that was, they were down 14 points in the game going into the half. They managed to come back and win the game against Oregon. Classic Big Ten matchup, by the way. And Michigan, to their credit, they went from a team that won 8 games last year to now a team that is, seriously a contender here for the Big Ten down the stretch. They're going to have to really, go off. But, they're not totally out of it, is what I'm saying. And obviously, both these teams have a relationship. We still have yet to see either of these teams meet. I believe the first game between these two is it's not this weekend, but I think it might be the following weekend. Will be Michigan State for the first time. And, of course, they end the year Michigan State against one another. If there's something to follow, especially if you're a Lions fan or if you're just looking for a team to get into, I don't know. In the Big Ten right now, that race between Michigan State right now, who's on top of the Big Ten with Purdue, and even, I think Oregon is not that far behind. Actually, I'm not sure about that. I think I remember Oregon's Big Ten record actually not being that good. But yeah, I'd have to look at the rankings again. But Michigan and Michigan State primarily, those are the two teams to follow, I'd say, in the Big Ten, at least in terms of interest. Like with some of these other teams, it's like, yeah, I guess you could follow Washington, but I don't think they're aware that the season is currently happening. But the other the other teams I'd say to watch out for or to just look out for, and this might be more national focus. The number 1 and number 2 teams in the country. If you're just a casual college basketball enjoyer, you might think Duke, maybe UConn, North Carolina, Kentucky, Alabama, and Auburn. Now, if you have even known anything about college basketball for any amount of time, you would know that the SEC typically wasn't all that good. But right now, the SEC is taking over college basketball. I mean, you have Tennessee, who's very good. Obviously, last year, Dalton Connect. This year, you got Alabama and Auburn, top 2 teams, respectively, in the nation. Auburn, number 1, Bama, number 2. And what makes it even better is it's not just that they're the number 1 and number 2 teams. Saturday, they are playing. And I got to tell you, I don't currently have any plans for Saturday, but I might just turn that game on. I don't know what other games will be on that night. I don't think there's going to be any other games. I might just tune in. And I don't even really care that much about SEC college basketball. I primarily will focus on the Big Ten and then into the March Madness tournament. But either way, college basketball is incredibly entertaining. If you don't like the NBA, if you don't like, the drama of NBA players and all that, if you want to see guys that actually go hard and are trying every night, go catch a college basketball game. There's plenty of them on basically every night. I'm a Michigan State fan, so I'm willing to endorse them right now. They're playing really good ball. I mean, an amazing comeback on Saturday afternoon on Fox. A lot of these games are national broadcasts as well, so you don't have to. Well, I guess tonight's game for Michigan State is on the Peacock. So if you have the Peacock, you could turn that game on if you're so inclined. But you also have games that are on Fox, CBS, all that fun stuff. So college basketball, that's my primary. Okay, now that football's over, we can take into that. Now, normally, I probably wouldn't say that college basketball would necessarily be my top. It's probably going to be somewhere in that top range. But I also really like the NBA. I'm a big Pistons fan, as can be known on many of my hit videos involving me yelling and screaming about the Pistons losing the lottery. But I also really love my Detroit Red Wings. Unfortunately, whoever made the schedules for these two leagues did not really, shall we say, consider the timing of things. So the NBA, well, we still have games this week. The Pistons play tonight here against the Bulls, and then they have a game, I believe, Thursday or maybe tomorrow. I don't actually remember, against the Bulls as well. And then they go into the All-Star break. And if you really want to watch players not try, go ahead and watch the All-Star game in the NBA. It wasn't always like this, but I don't know. I guess at some point players realized, hey, wait a minute. There is no benefit and only a loss to us if we do not try. Now, the NHL is a little bit interesting. So typically this also would be around the time of the All-Star break for the NHL. However, the NHL said, you know what? Largely speaking, people don't really care about the All-Star game, the Pro Bowl, those sort of things in sports. At least not anymore. So they said, you know what we're going to do? And this is not something they created. It's just I think they've done it before. But they've created what is known as the Four Nations Tournament. Now, I'm no mathematician, but I'm pretty sure there's more than 4 countries in which hockey players are from, but we're just going to forget all that, all right? So you got 4 nations. If I get these right, I'm probably going to get them wrong, but it's the United States, all right? Canada, okay? Sweden, okay? And I believe Finland. I can't help but feel that we're missing a large, maybe a country that starts in Eastern Europe and goes all the way to, Eastern Asia, or like, I'm just saying, why is Russia not in it? I understand that I'm not going to get into it, but I understand there is something of a conflict going on in Russia and Eastern Europe generally. But why are we then just like, we're making some statement by saying you're not allowed to play hockey with us? It's like, I don't think Vladimir Putin is coaching the Russian hockey team. That doesn't really make any sense if that's what you think. And furthermore, it's not like the games are in Russia anyway. I don't even know where they are. I don't think they're in the home country. I think they're in some, arena that is. I think it's in neutral. I don't actually know. And the further problem is none of this is really like all that advertised all that well. And the problem is, unlike say the Olympics or any of these other kind of national, like with the Olympics, it's like, okay, you can kind of throw it on. It's every country is represented, right? So you have, you can see the German team or the Russian team or whatever. In this case, we have just the USA, Canada, Finland, and Sweden. And I mean, I guess I'll root for the United States, but either way, the NHL is going to be off 2 weeks for this thing. The NBA is going to be off for a week. And then I think they have a little bit more as well because, heaven forbid any of these players actually, play some games play more than, get more than a week off, or less than a week off for an all-star break. And then it's like we're already in a spot where, okay, there's no football. So I'm basically stuck for at least, for this week, I'll have a couple of Pistons games, but then I also have nothing but college basketball. So to swing it back to college basketball, if there's any time to get into college basketball, it'd be right now because you're probably not going to be able to get into the NBA. You're almost certainly not going to be able to get into the NHL because the NHL hates itself and does not want to be successful. So, your best shot, just start watching college basketball because it's fun. It's enjoyable. You want to see random school beat Alabama? It could happen, And obviously, most people really get into it once the March Madness tournament starts. But you want to build those storylines. You want to build the relationship with some of these teams. Start watching now. You'll be surprised. Oh, and I do also want to point out that MLB is also closer than you up here. Pitchers and catchers report tomorrow, and the first spring training game, at least for the Tigers, is in just a couple of weeks. So, actually, not even a couple of weeks. Next week, like next Saturday, is the first spring training game for the Tigers, and I'm sure for many other teams. Crazy. That's all I got. What was that picture they had of Dennis Schroeder? Oh, yeah, Dennis Schroeder got traded to the Pistons, by the way. We're going to talk about it in just a second. We're going to get into the trade deadline. But that was a weird picture of Dennis Schroeder. It did not. It's like, is that Schroeder? I don't look like him. I guess it is. But yeah, so there you go. All right. I guess we could do. We're doing this kind of in reverse a little bit. Yeah, we're doing this a little bit in reverse. Yeah, let's just do it. All right. So I got to talk about this because it just kind of feeds into a narrative and a belief that I have had for a very long time. All right. Aaron Rodgers just recently got cut, basically, or the Jets are moving on from Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if they officially have quote unquote cut him, but they're moving on from him. All right. And apparently Devontae Adams could also be moved on from. So it's a bit of a reset for the New York Jets. Now, there was an Athletic article that showed and told a little bit more about what the Jets' plans were for Aaron Rodgers. Basically, the idea being they wanted to keep him back. However, we had a few conditions for Aaron Rodgers in order to keep you here. Okay? This isn't all that unusual. A lot of times a new regime comes in, some of the veteran players, they kind of, run, okay, what is it that you're going to do? And then you go from there. Perfect example, Matthew Stafford, as soon as Campbell and Holmes were drafted, it was clear from Holmes and Campbell's perspective, we're going to rebuild. Stafford said, I don't want to be in a rebuild. Okay, we'll ship you out to somewhere, and you can do for that what you will. The Jets' plan, according to The Athletic, for Aaron Rodgers, quote, no outside media appearances, including McAfee, attendance at mandatory practice. Now, somebody elaborated a little bit further and quoted directly from the article here. And I quote, Rodgers flew to New Jersey last week to meet with team leadership, including new head coach Aaron Glenn and general manager Darren Maugi. I don't know how to pronounce that. Heading into the meeting, the Jets were undecided on whether to go forward with Rodgers, but were open to the possibility if Rodgers agreed to make adjustments. Among them, Rodgers would no longer be permitted to make outside media appearances during the season, including his regular paid appearances on the Pat McAfee show. And secondly, he would be required to attend all mandatory practices. Last year, Rodgers missed 2 mandatory minicamp practices due to a previously scheduled vacation trip to Egypt. And Rodgers said, I don't want that. Rodgers said, no, you can't make me. No, I don't want to. I don't want to go to practice, Mom. I don't want to not go see my friends at the Pat McAfee show. I don't want to. I want it all to be about me. I want to do whatever I want to do, and to hell with the team's success. Hey, man, let me just tell you. At the beginning of the show, I said, I hate to say I told you so. In this case, I love saying it. I told you so hard. I was one of the only, maybe not the only people, but I was one of the few people who was like, this whole Aaron Rodgers to the Jets thing, this has disaster written all over it. He had a terrible final year in Green Bay. His final game in Green Bay, he played an awful game where he threw a game-losing interception to Kirby Joseph, his father. And the vibes were totally off. He had about a half a good season that year where he started to kind of turn around as soon as, things started to look bad. And then he goes to the Jets. He tears his Achilles on play 1. He gets back to healthy, and he's just terrible. He's like as bad as Zach Wilson, if not worse. Frankly, he might be worse in terms of his media problems that he created because, Zach Wilson's a terrible quarterback. Zach Wilson never made, annoying media appearances. He never skipped practice. He never made things worse than they already might have been, right? Like he was just a bad quarterback. Aaron Rodgers was a bad quarterback and also not a great teammate, seemingly. Seemingly not someone you could really get around with. Like, Aaron Rodgers comes in and he takes a team with one of the top defenses with a lot of young talent and Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and some of these other guys on the defense. And by the end of it, you got no GM. You had no coach. You had a bunch of old, washed-up wide receivers. Devontae Adams, a shell of his former self. It was Alan Lazard even still on the team at that point. I actually don't know. This is me genuinely asking. I don't, no real chemistry with Garrett Wilson or with Breece Hall. I don't even know if Breece Hall was healthy. But, he just went in, and the Jets were already not a great situation, but he went in and he made them into an awful situation. And the Jets ought to be ashamed of themselves for putting themselves in this highly predictable situation. Of course, an old, washed-up quarterback who just had an awful season with his old team is not just going to go in and be his 2019 or 2020 MVP self. It's just not going to happen. It is so obviously not going to happen. And the fact that not that many people predicted this would be the case, that many people thought that the Jets were going to be Super Bowl contenders because they went out and got Aaron Rodgers, was patently ridiculous. And it just goes to show how so many of these talking heads, so many of these media national personalities have no clue what they're talking about. They don't watch all of the games. They don't watch the games where Aaron Rodgers looks like, Stevie Wonder out there, or is disinterested, or is showing a clear character flaw. All they see is the guy who won the Super Bowl over a decade ago. So, of course you think that when he comes onto the Jets, he's just going to magically turn them into contenders. You know what's crazy? And I don't know how good Aaron Glenn is going to be as a coach. I do think he's a solid motivator and a solid leader. But I will say, you got to give the guy credit for immediately coming in and saying, we're not having any of this. All right. All this nonsense, all this Pat McAfee, all this going to Egypt, we're not doing any of this. And Rodgers can't do it because his ego is the size of a blue whale. It's just ridiculous. And I got to say, Aaron Rodgers went from a fairly likable guy. Obviously, as a Lions fan, you don't really... He was not exactly a pleasant figure in our history, but a pretty non-controversial figure to a guy who lied about getting a vaccine even though he didn't get a vaccine, a guy who's going on these weird darkness retreats, he's dating some weird new age hippie weird woman who's giving him mushrooms and all this weird. And he's missing practices. He's, clearing. He's taking over teams, seemingly making them fire coaches. I will never believe otherwise that he did not get Robert Saleh fired. I don't want to hear any other, I don't want to hear anything else. He definitely had a plan or definitely had a factor in that, to his stupid appearances on the Pat McAfee show, pretending to be just like one of the guys. You're just not a real dude. You're not actually into it because you love it, right? You're into it because you love the attention, right? You love the media spotlighting you. You love, being I'm going to be different than everybody. I'm going to say I'm going to talk about darkness retreats. I'm going to go get enemas in Peru or what it's like, why can't you just be a football player? Why can't you just be normal? Why do you got to be like this, Aaron? But, couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, I guess. So, shout out Aaron Rodgers, and I don't know. Good luck, Jets, I guess. I don't know what you even do if you're the Jets. I suppose you draft a quarterback. Actually, I don't even know. Who's going to be available? Whatever. They'll figure it out. They won't, probably. I mean, historically. I hope they do. But historically, is Joe Namath available? Maybe they could get him. Oh my gosh. They're showing the De'Aaron Fox / Zach LaVine trade and what the Bulls got in return. My goodness. What a terrible trade. I got to tell you, man, I think I mentioned this last week. It's got to be a rough time to be a Chicago sports fan. It really does. The Bulls are awful. They're just awful. Don't get this stupid, they're in the play. They're awful. All right? They're just terrible. And I say this, and then the Pistons are probably going to lose tonight. But they're just terrible. All right? The Bulls are so bad. And then you have the Bears, who are their own, disaster. They're terrible, the Bears. Caleb Williams might be a bust. Who knows? I don't know that he is, but he's certainly not playing like a success story. And then it gets even worse. You think it's bad with those two teams are actually the high spot. The Bulls might, technically speaking, make the postseason. Then you get to the Blackhawks, and the Blackhawks are just awful. They have a generational talent in Connor Bedard, but that's about it. They got nothing. They got absolutely nothing. So, and they are showing no signs of moving anywhere anytime soon. So even if they do win the lottery again this year, I'd be shocked to see them just leapfrog all the way up to back into the playoffs in just a year. They'd have to have a crazy offseason to do that. And then, of course, I guess you have the Chicago Cubs, they're fine. They're kind of like the Bulls. They're not great, but they're not embarrassingly bad either. And then you get the White Sox, and yeah, I don't even really want to bring them up because it just feels like beating up a homeless person. It's like I don't even know if they've done anything in the offseason now that I think about it. Like, have they signed any free agents? I'm sure they have. Jeez. I mean, that's not good. If you're out in Chicago,
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets.
that's probably what you're saying right now. Every time one of your teams is playing, if you're in Chicago, you're watching the Bulls tonight.
Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets.
That's you. Yeah, girl, I'm out here in these streets. Thank you, Kamala. I'm so glad I have that drop on my board. All right. Speaking of the Bulls and of the NBA, so I'm going to go through some of these trade deadline moves rather quickly with some level of commentary onto each of them. I'll try to be as brief and as, I don't know. I'll just jump into it. I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, first big deal of the trade deadline that I got to talk about is Jimmy Butler to the Warriors. So Jimmy Butler, to me, a really good player, but frankly, kind of a toxic guy. I don't know that this is I don't know that he is the kind of guy that you want. Like, this will be his fourth team that he's forced his way out of every team that he's been on. So it's getting to the point where it's like you're kind of just James Hardening yourself, like, or Kevin Duranting yourself, or what like, it's like, okay, one team, I get it, right? Sometimes you got to force your way out. It's a bad situation. Team's not treating you well. All that, I understand. Second team, all right, still kind of understandable, maybe. By team number 3, okay, I mean, like, maybe you're just really unlucky. And by team 4, there's only one common denominator, and it's you. And Jimmy Butler's a fine player. I've sung the praises of Jimmy Butler on this very show. But the holding out and the not playing, the not practicing because you wanted a bigger deal from the Heat, I'm sorry, man. Like, the Heat are one of the most well-run organizations in the NBA. Pat Riley always has it, humming. Not necessarily championship every time, but, like, this is a team that, is just well-run. It's a machine. And it's funny because it's in Miami, which is not a particularly, major sports town. They have a few teams, obviously, but they're not, they're not hyped up, I guess. And among that trade, the Pistons actually get involved. They end up getting, out of this trade, Dennis Schroeder. Now, you're probably thinking, how did this happen? To be perfectly honest with you, I don't know. So basically, involved in the trade, the Pistons ended up getting, they had a couple of second-round picks that they got from the 76ers, and also they picked up a couple of players, and at some point, they bundled this all up, and they get Dennis Schroeder. Now, Dennis Schroeder, I like Dennis Schroeder. Let me just pull up his stats really quick just to reiterate the kind of player that he is that the Pistons are getting. 14 points a game this year, a couple of assists a game, a couple of boards a game, 5 assists a game, shooting 36% from 3, 41% from the field overall, 1.8 win share, 50% effective field goal. He's a good player. Now, Dennis Schroeder's also been on a bunch of teams. He's a journeyman, but he's an effective journeyman. It's kind of funny. Like, he was on like 4 teams in 24 hours. It's like crazy. Like, he was on the Warriors, and then he was on the Jazz, and then he was on the Pistons. It's crazy. It's crazy. But he comes into this situation in Detroit where, obviously you're down Jaden Ivey, but Cade Cunningham, all-star, one of the best guards, one of the best players in the East writ large. And he's gonna get significant minutes. He's gonna get time on the floor. He's going to be an effective player for your team, assuming you make the postseason. Like, he's done it before. He can be clutch at moments. I remember a few years back when he was on the Lakers. he made some clutch shots. Not saying that he's necessarily going to do that again, but for me, the thing that I really liked about this deal for the Pistons, and we'll move on to the other deals in just a second here, Trajan Langdon basically had to give up nothing. He traded for a bunch of stuff and got a bunch of pieces, got a bunch of picks or players or what have you, and he ends up using that stuff to get Dennis Schroeder. So we don't have to give up the Malik Beasleys or the Jalen Durans or whomever or the Marcus Sassers. We just get a bunch of random little deals that people don't pay that much attention to. And then, oh, by the way, you get Dennis Schroeder for basically nothing. So I know it's only been a few seasons here of Trajan Langdon running the show. He has shown to be one of the more shrewd GMs in this league. He really has. Like, that deal for Tim Hardaway, you give up Quentin Grimes, who, by the way, also got moved, is no longer even on the team that we had traded him to. And you get Tim Hardaway for that and some picks for Tim. Like, I thought at the time that was a pretty good deal. Looking back, that is one of the most lopsided trades in favor of the Pistons. Now, Tim Hardaway is not Michael Jordan, but still. And obviously the Malik Beasley signing is its own thing, and Malik Beasley seemingly wants to stay in Detroit. That's all the indications, so I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see an extension for him. If not later in the season, at the start of the offseason, whenever that may be, for the Pistons. But either way, the Dennis Schroeder deal, I thought it was a really solid deal. I think it's going to make the Pistons a lot better than they were before, where it was basically if Cade was having an off night, you just hope that everybody else picked up the slack. And sometimes that works, and other times it does not. So, yeah, just a solid move. Moving along, though, I got to talk about this. So Seth is not here, but his Milwaukee Bucks did make a move. They got the man, the myth, the legend, Kyle Kuzma. Kyle Kuzma, for those of you who are uninitiated, he used to play for a team known as the Washington Wizards. Now, technically speaking, they are a professional team, but you wouldn't know it from the way they play. So Kyle Kuzma, I'm going to stop making fun of the guy, a solid player. Now, what do they give up? They give up, let me pull it. Let me pull up the actual trade. But can I see the actual full trade? No? Are we just, okay. Why do I even post the Bleacher Report links in the show sheet? Basically, they give up Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton goes to the Wizards, which tells me Chris Middleton's feet no longer work. Chris Middleton, he had been dealing with some injuries the last couple of years, and it seems to me that basically they're done with him. Now, Kyle Kuzma, he was a guy that a couple of off seasons ago I said, maybe the Pistons could try to bring him in. So he's a guy that I don't hate, but I also am not leaping up in the air at, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. Just to be perfectly transparent, he's a negative win share guy this year, which is not good, but also the team is 4 in a million. So, not winning a lot of games in general. I do think he's going to make the Bucks better, especially seeing as Chris Middleton was just not himself. But your coach is Doc Rivers, so it's kind of yeah, Kyle Kuzma, but Doc Rivers in the playoffs. It's like a neutralizing agent. It's like an antidote to a good team. It's like, this is how we cure a good team and turn them into a bad team. You just give them Doc Rivers in the playoffs. So I'm sure Seth will have fun with that. The other thing that I got to talk about, so a lot of people were initially just oh my gosh, the Lakers had an amazing trade deadline. We'll talk about the Luka Doncic deal in a little bit here, or at least further more about it, because obviously we talked about it last week. They go out and they trade for Mark Williams from Charlotte, and they send Dalton Connect to the Hornets. I was like, whoa, that's a big move. That was a crazy move. But actually, it got voided. Mark Williams failed his physical. Now, apparently, the Charlotte Hornets are actually disputing this. I'm going to be honest. I trust the Lakers organization a lot more than the Charlotte Hornets in terms of efficacy of the physical. I forgot what word it was I used. That to me is it's unfortunate. You hate to see it. And, the Lakers probably still won the trade deadline because they managed to get Luka Doncic for nothing. And we'll get to that deal in mere moments here. This deal didn't really make much sense to me. Brandon Ingram going to the Raptors. I guess if it tells me anything, it tells me that teams that are contending either A, just couldn't afford Brandon Ingram, or B, that they just don't really like Brandon Ingram. Because the Raptors are not exactly an elite, team that's right there. Team that's, gonna contend in the, in the near future. I don't know. I found it to be a really odd deal for Toronto. They end up sending Bruce Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and a first-round pick and a second-round pick to New Orleans, which, okay, I mean, I don't know. Both these organizations, both the Pelicans and the Raptors, it's just like, the Spider-Man meme of just who wants to make a more confusing move. Like, Brandon Ingram, clearly not in their future, obviously, but yeah, I just don't know why he's on the Raptors. That just seems strange to me. And then a couple more moves here. DeAndre Hunter goes over to the Cavs. Decent player, No, can't really hate on it, Not DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Hunter. There we go. Decent player, this year, close to 20 points a game. So definitely having a career year for him. He goes into a loaded Cleveland team. So certainly a good move for them in his debut. Let's see, he scored 12 points. So you're going to get a lot of that. That's for sure. So, yeah, I guess good for Cleveland. I think it's a good move. They're slowly but surely, I don't even know if slowly but surely is the right word. They are surely becoming one of the best teams in the East right now and a clear favorite to make the NBA Finals, assuming things continue to go well for them and nobody gets injured. So just a solid move. There wasn't really much else to say there. The Hawks get draft picks and things. That's all I got. And then finally, this one was also kind of weird to me. I didn't mean to do that. Hold on. The Marcus Smart to the Wizards. So I remember at the time when Marcus Smart got signed or traded. I don't remember what it was. When he ended up on the Memphis Grizzlies, I thought, wow, this is a really solid move. He's a really good defender. Just seemingly a team guy. He was well respected in Boston. And they gave him up for 2 second-round picks. So, yeah. And he's going to Washington. Boy, that Washington team, man, that's got to be a tough watch. You got Carl Kuzma, no, not anymore. You got Jordan Poole, Marcus Smart, and the player formerly known as Chris Middleton. Not good. Not good for the Wizards. And now finally, I got to wrap up this trade deadline segment with this. The Luka Doncic trade just got even worse because man bites dog. Shams Charania reporting a couple of days ago. Dallas Mavericks star, we're going to use that term in quotations, star Anthony Davis is expected to miss multiple weeks with a left adductor strain, sources tell ESPN. His absence could stretch to a month. So all the defenders of the Luka trade, all the morons and brain dead Luka haters, how's that trade looking now? How's it? Is it? Would you say, for example, it is more or less likely to lead to any sort of championship for the Mavericks in the near future? If you said less likely, then call me crazy. That might mean that the Mavs made a bad trade, right? maybe, just maybe, giving up your 25-year-old superstar, top 5 potential MVP winning star player who helped you get to the NBA Finals just a year prior for a aging center who has a history of injuries. Maybe that's not a great idea. Maybe you should have, I don't know, if you were thinking of shopping Luka Doncic, which why you would even do that is unfathomable. Well, let's say you were. Maybe you should, potentially, I don't know, again, I'm not a GM, maybe call other teams, maybe make it known, maybe have other teams like in the talks constantly and maybe be able to play the Lakers off the Clippers or off the whomever or whatever, maybe you ever think of that? And you know what's even worse about this whole thing? Obviously, fans are peeved. That's putting it nicely. Fans are furious, as they should be. So fans are going to the games, and they are chanting "Fire Nico," who is the general manager for the Mavs. They're pulling out signs that say "Fire Nico," and these cowards, and that's what they are, cowards in the Mavs front office who are seeing this, are kicking these people out. Now, I'm not one to say, and I will be as critical on fan behavior at games as anyone, because some of the behavior I've seen at sporting events, whether it's, the kind of language that people spout out in front of kids or 2 players or whatever, unacceptable behavior. But I'm sorry. I've lived my whole life. I've heard of all these like people wear paper bags on their head and chant "Sell the team." You know what? And I can't believe I have to do this. I'm going to defend Tom Gores. You know what Tom Gores didn't do when fans were, chanting "Sell the team"? You know what he didn't do? He didn't kick people out. He didn't tell these people who pay their hard-earned money, who spend all day working just so that they can go to a game, enjoy a night out, or bring their kid to a game or whatever. He didn't kick those people out for voicing their opinion about the state of the team. Because if you're so confident that the move you made is the right move for the team and that it'll lead to success in the short term and maybe even in the long term, then why are you kicking fans out for questioning that? Like, that just tells me that you are aware that you have egg on your face and you just don't want anybody to continue to point out how bad it is. Like, Nico Harrison and the ownership of the Mavs, grow a spine and grow some grow other anatomical parts and go out there and actually face the fans, the people that you betrayed by trading a star like Luka Doncic, the face of the franchise. And like, this has nothing to do with who you traded him to. Obviously, I'm no lover of the Los Angeles Lakers, but you could have traded him to the Charlotte Hornets. I would still be upset because what on earth compels you to have this perception of a player who had put everything for you, who was giving his all to the point where you were in the finals last year? You were 4 wins away, or 3 wins away, because you lost 3-1 or 4-1. 3 wins away from a second NBA championship. You have just one of those in your franchise, and 1/3 of them was, or 1/3 of your appearances and such were from this one guy, and you traded him for nothing. If you even, again, the idea of trading Luka Doncic is absurd, but let's say you traded him and you got 5 first-round picks, and you got a star player right now, and you got a young prospect who could pan out. Maybe I could say, okay, maybe they know something we don't. It's crazy, it's insane, but I could at least understand, okay, maybe he hadn't played a whole lot of games this year. Maybe he's really unhealthy. Maybe he's unmotivated, whatever the case may be. When the guy didn't want out, he didn't request a trade and seemed willing to sign the Supermax. When a guy just gave you one of the best seasons you've had in your franchise history, which, by the way, is not exactly full of those. And then you have owners and morons like Mark Cuban and Nico and all these people kicking people out and yelling at fans for criticizing the moves of the team. Like, the entire Dallas Mavericks organization ought to be ashamed of themselves. I'm not even a Dallas Mavericks fan. And I'm the fan of a team that just had the worst record in franchise history last year. And I am far more confident in the ownership and front office of the Pistons than anywhere near where I am with the Dallas Mavericks. It is absolutely beyond me what compelled them to do that, and further the actions after the fact. Because, Anthony Davis injury aside, you have, obviously Anthony Davis, if he's healthy, he's a good player, right? And nobody's disputing that. It's the fact that you seem so just motivated by some personal animus against either just Luka personally or seemingly against the fans who support Luka, to the point where you're like, get out of the game. You brought signs that say fire Nico, you're out. Oh, I don't care how much that you spent, $100 on the tickets and parking and all that and concessions or whatever it is. Oh, you're, yelling, at Mark Cuban about to fire Nico. Mark Cuban says, go F yourself. Real nice, Mark. Really showing your maturity and your composure amongst these plebes, these plebeians. We can't all be as smart as the billionaire Mark Cuban, I guess. So I know he's not the primary owner of the team anymore as he used to be, but hey, Mark, you got one NBA championship. My team's got 3, and they haven't made the playoffs in 7 years. So, if you want to get in your high horse and think that you're running some massively successful organization, you got another thing coming, buddy boy. Because I know what it's like to have a team that actually knows what it's doing and can put out championship caliber team. I don't really know that you know that much, because Dirk Nowitzki is your whole legacy. So, good job, Dallas. You basically turned not only your fans against you, but basically the entire NBA against you. So, hope it was worth it. Because Anthony Davis is not going to win you a championship. He might not even win you a playoff series. He might not even really make the playoffs at this rate, honestly. So, have fun. Your team is Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving. Fun. What is this nickname, Michael Jackson stuff? I don't even know if he's still in the chat. Nita's scrotum got passed around like a girl in Oakland. That is Dennis Scrotum. Dennis Schroeder. Not nice. We're not going to make fun of the man's name. All right? Not nice. Not nice. I actually put in these notes here about MSU and the Red Wings. Not realizing that I basically already talked about both of these teams. Well, okay, I guess I'll briefly mention, MSU crazy bounce back win against Oregon. Needed it, and they did it in dramatic fashion, a crazy comeback. And I tried to tell all y'all about Jace Richardson, man. 29 points from the freshman. Love me some Jace Richardson. He's going to be a stud. I'm telling you. At least in the college level, he's going to be a stud if he's not already, which it seems signs are pointing to yes. And then the Red Wings, right now they're sitting in the playoff spot as we enter the break, which is awesome to see. We've been in this spot where in the month of February, the Red Wings were sitting in a playoff spot. It's really just a matter of finishing the job. The problem is, you got this 2-week break coming up, and McClellan is going to have to show just how different he is from Lalonde, because he's going to have to come out of this break and still be able to perform, because Lalonde was able to get into a playoff spot in February. 2 years in a row, he was in that spot. So now you got a really tough schedule coming up, because you're going to have a lot of games mashed together in March and early April, I should say. So we'll see. It's final month and a half or so for the Red Wings, and they're just kind of holding on. They stumbled there at the final game before the break there with the loss to the Tampa Bay Lightning, which is a team you're chasing, so you hate to lose that game. But you're still in the playoffs, so if you can maintain your level of play and continue to, show the McClellan magic, so to speak, then maybe you got something. Maybe you got something. Boy, would it be nice to have playoff hockey back in Detroit. That would just be stupendous. Now, whether or not they go very far is its own question, but anything can happen in hockey especially. But I guess that's basically it. It's weird. This is the first show since, I guess like early August or middle of August that we don't have the picks to end the show. It's sad. It's genuinely kind of sad. I don't know. Well, that's it. So if you did enjoy the show, please hit the like, please hit the subscribe button as well. They do both help me out and help spread the show. Leave a comment about any of the things that we talked about on the show, and we'll have a discussion. It's always a fun time when people get involved in the comment section. And with that, I will be back next week, and we'll talk about all the sporting news of the week. I'm sure there's going to be something, but if not, maybe it'll just be a short show. I don't know. I mean, we're going to have basically just college football and the college basketball and the All-Star break, and maybe some of the NFL offseason. We'll figure it out. With that being said, though, hope everybody has a great rest of your night. I know it's going to be snowing tomorrow, so be safe tomorrow, at least in Michigan. If you're not in Michigan, then I don't know. Don't be safe. That's fine. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll talk to you all next week. Good night. See you later.